The rain had barely stopped when Yoona stepped out of the quiet cafe in Cheongdam-dong. It was the kind of seoul afternoon where the air hung heavy with unspoken things, like a song fading before its final note. She smiled faintly to a passing photographer. Kind of professional smile that hides everything it needs to. Behind that smile, however, the once bright love story between Yoona and Lee Junho had already begun to dissolve. To the public, they had been the perfect pairing, two of Korea's most beloved stars, whose chemistry in King the Land felt too real to be just acting. Fans called them the golden couple. Industry whispered about their closeness, and for a moment, it seemed like love had found its spotlight. But as red carpet reveal discovered, the story behind those smiles was far more fragile than anyone knew. It began in the early months of 2021. On set, surrounded by cameras, scripts, and the hum of studio lights, Yoona and Junho met not as idols but as actors chasing authenticity. Between takes, would share jokes, trade snacks, and speak in the quiet shorthand that only two people falling in love understand. They had that energy. A crew member later said, even when the camera wasn't rolling, you could feel the warmth between them. It wasn't performance. It was something real. By the time filming wrapped, the two were inseparable. Late-night dinners in Gangnam turned into long walks along the Han River. They had their codes, matching bracelets, secret nicknames saved under different names in their phones. Was happier than I'd seen her in years. Shared a stylist close to Yoona. He made her laugh like a normal person, not like a star. But love, especially under the bright lights of fame, rarely gets to stay simple. Management teams, SM Entertainment and JYP, were cautious, calculating every move. The press was relentless. And fans, in their fervor, could be both loving and cruel. A relationship like that becomes a battlefield. A PR executive told us quietly. One mistake, one rumor, and you risk careers, endorsements, millions of fans' expectations. As months passed, the cracks began to show. Schedules pulled them in opposite directions, Yoona to international shoots and charity projects, Junho to music and drama sets. When they did meet, it was often between flights, in hotel rooms with curtains drawn, where time was counted not in hours but in heartbeats. Sometimes they'd only have 20 minutes, said a close friend. She'd rush to see him before her next flight, and then cry in the car on the way to the airport. By late 2022, the tension had become undeniable. Fans noticed fewer public interactions, fewer matching accessories, fewer smiles that lingered. Rumors swirled that Junho wanted marriage while Yoona feared commitment. That career came before love. Neither spoke publicly, but those around them saw the exhaustion in their eyes. Yoona, always graceful, began avoiding questions about him during interviews. Junho, once open and bright, turned introspective. At her apartment in Nonhyun-dong, Yoona would stand by the window at night, watching the glow of the city spread across the skyline. The same city that once held her laughter with Junho now reflected only silence. Friends described her as tired, but composed, like someone pretending to be fine. She filled her days with work, photoshoots, rehearsals, scripts, anything to stay too busy to remember. Yet every now and then, a familiar song on the radio or a fan mentioning his name would pull her back into that ache. February 2023 was the month it all ended. That night, the temperature dropped below freezing, and Seoul was wrapped in a thin drizzle. They met on a rooftop near Itaewon, a place they had once gone to watch fireworks together. This time, there were no fireworks, only silence. Ho arrived first, standing beneath the dim rooftop light, hands shoved into his coat pockets. When Yoona stepped into the cold air, she could already feel the distance between them. They spoke softly at first, about schedules, about fatigue, about everything except what mattered most. Then the truth began to break through. Maybe love isn't enough if we can't breathe, Junho said, his voice trembling slightly. Yoona stared at him for a long moment before whispering, then let's set each other free before we destroy what's left. The wind picked up, carrying away their words like secrets too heavy to keep. They didn't cry in front of each other. They had become too professional, too practiced in hiding pain. Instead, Yoona turned first, walking toward the elevator with steady steps. Only when the doors closed did she let the tears fall. Silent and uncontrollable, Junho remained on the rooftop long after, staring at the city below. The drizzle turning to rain. For weeks, no one knew. Publicly, both continued working, smiling at press conferences, promoting their projects, pretending. Privately, they drifted through the days like ghosts. Yoona stopped wearing the bracelet they had chosen together. Junho deleted the photos. Or at least tried to. But in interviews, when her name was mentioned, a shadow would flicker across his face. Brief but unmistakable. Rumors surfaced that they had broken up because of agency pressure. Others claimed jealousy. Others exhaustion. The truth, as Yoona would later admit, was far simpler and far sadder. We forgot how to be ourselves. Started protecting the image more than the love. In the spring of 2023, Yoona left Seoul for a commercial shoot on Jeju Island. To outsiders, it was just another brand project. To her, it was escape. The sea was calm that week. The air soft and forgiving. Between takes, she would walk alone along the rocky coast, watching waves crash against the cliffs. That was the first time I saw her breathe again. A makeup artist remembered. She looked peaceful. But her eyes were somewhere else, like she was waiting for a sound that never came. That sound came months later. Not yet in the way she expected. While filming, a local fan had asked you if she missed anyone. He smiled gently and said, "Sometimes the people we miss the most are the ones we shouldn't have let go." It's the closest she had come to acknowledging the breakup publicly. And the clip quietly went viral, amassing millions of views overnight. Comments flooded in: sympathy, heartbreak, curiosity. Fans began to guess what had happened. And the name Lee Junho appeared everywhere again. Junho, meanwhile, threw himself into work. During promotions for King the Land, maintained composure, professionalism, and poise. Outsiders noted his mood changed, fewer jokes, later interviews, a subtle melancholy that followed him. He was working harder than ever. One crew member said. But you could tell. He'd glance at the monitor sometimes. A replay of them laughing together on screen, and just pause. Yoona kept her silence. She avoided statements. Avoided the tabloids. Avoided giving anyone a headline. In closed doors, she filled notebooks with thoughts she never spoke aloud. In one, later quoted by a source close to her, had written, "People think time heals. It doesn't. It only teaches you how to hide the scar." Each summer, the two were living separate lives but still somehow circling the same orbit. Industry insiders hinted that they occasionally texted, polite, restrained, but unmistakably still connected. It was never truly over, said an assistant who worked on both of their sets. Or just pretending it was. As autumn came again, Yoona returned to Seoul. She attended Fashion Week, smiling for cameras, and composed. Yet even in that perfection, there was a quiet vulnerability. Fans noticed how often she looked down when asked about relationships, how her smile would falter for half a second before she caught herself. "She's the master of grace," a journalist wrote. But even grace can't hide heartbreak. Those who knew her best understood what was happening. She was learning how to live without him, but not how to stop loving him. Yoona has always been strong, said a longtime friend. But this time, she wasn't trying to be strong. Trying to be honest with herself. And perhaps that honesty was the beginning of what came next. Or it might have ended there. Two people, two careers, two paths diverging quietly beneath Seoul's glittering skyline. But fate, it seems, had a different script in mind. Because sometimes, love doesn't vanish. It just waits, quietly, for courage to return. Months later, on a cool November night, Yoona wrapped up a late recording session. Her phone buzzed with a single message. No emoji, no introduction. Just two words that changed everything. "Okay," signed simply, J.H. Stared at the screen for a long time, heart pounding. Sure whether to smile or cry. And somewhere, across the city, Junho waited, his own phone in hand. The message read. The silence between them finally beginning to break. The sea was quiet that morning on Jeju Island. A calm blue horizon stretching endlessly beyond the volcanic cliffs. The wind carried the scent of tangerines and salt. Kind of air that feels like forgiveness. Yoona had returned to Jeju for another brand shoot, the same island where, a year earlier, he had walked alone trying to forget. Only this time, Someone was waiting. When she stepped into the small seaside cafe near Siaguipo, the same one she had once sat in by herself, she froze. Lee Junho was already there, seated at the corner table facing the sea. 2 coffees on the table, untouched. He looked almost the same, except softer somehow, as if time had sanded down the sharp edges of his pride. Their eyes met for the first time in months. For a heartbeat the entire world seemed to hold its breath. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi," he answered, standing up, uncertain whether to smile. It wasn't dramatic, no tears, no music, just the raw awkwardness of 2 people who had memorized each other's silence. They sat down, the distance between them a careful arm's length, thick with everything unsaid. Outside, waves broke against the rocks, rhythmic and patient, urging them to begin. He spoke first. "I saw your interview last month," he said, referring to a small TV appearance where she had mentioned missing someone you shouldn't have let go. She looked away, embarrassed. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything." "It did to me," he replied. For a long time, they just listened to the sea. Then Yoona sighed. "Why now?" Jo's voice lowered. "Because I realized silence was worse than losing you." Followed wasn't the rekindling of a fairy tale, it was the painstaking reconstruction of trust. Over the next few days, walked together along Jeju's empty beaches, sometimes talking, sometimes just sharing the same sky. They laughed about old inside jokes, about the time their agencies made them ride in separate cars to avoid rumors. They remembered the good parts, the laughter between takes, the small notes slipped into scripts, the quiet phone calls after midnight. But more importantly, they spoke honestly about what had gone wrong. "I was scared of how much I needed you," Yoona confessed one evening as they watched the sunset turn the ocean pink. "Everyone saw me as confident, in control. But you saw the side I kept hidden, the one that breaks easily." Junho looked at her, the reflection of the setting sun in his eyes. "And I was scared of hurting you," he said. "Thought walking away would protect you from me. But it only made me realize that the only thing worse than breaking your heart was not being part of it." They didn't rush. There were no official statements, no secret photos, just small things, morning walks to the pier, sharing noodles at a tiny restaurant, her laughter echoing down a narrow alley of old stone houses. One evening, they found an abandoned piano in a hotel lounge. Yoona pressed a few keys, hesitant, while Junho hummed the melody of a song they once loved. The sound was imperfect but tender, kind of harmony only 2 people who have forgiven each other can create. For 2 weeks, they stayed on the island. No managers, no stylists, no schedules, only them. It was like time stopped, recalled a cafe worker who later recognized them. They looked peaceful, like a couple that had fought every storm and finally found calm waters. When they returned to Seoul in late spring 2024, they decided to keep everything private, or at least try to. But Seoul is never kind to secrets. One late night in June, a fan spotted them walking along Apgujeong Rodeo Street, wearing masks but holding hands. A few days later, photos surfaced online, Yoona and Junho leaving a small restaurant together, laughing. The pictures exploded across social media before sunrise. Within hours, hashtags like Yoona Junho back together and second chance love dominated global trends. Both agencies scrambled to respond. Entertainment released a cautious statement. Yoona and Junho have reconnected as close friends and continue to support each other with warmth. Jip followed with almost the same wording. Fans didn't need confirmation, the looks in those photos said everything. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, the couple was quietly rebuilding. They had set clear boundaries, no hiding, but no spectacle either. "We promised to live it real this time," Junho later said in a confidential interview. "Not for cameras, not for fans, just for us." Their closest circle noticed the difference. "They're more grounded now," said one of Yoona's makeup artists. "Before, it was excitement. Now it's peace." Still, the public reunion came with its storms. Online debates flared, some fans cheered, others worried it might distract from their careers. Sections flooded with speculation. Through it all, Yoona remained calm. "I learned not to defend love," she told a friend. "Love doesn't need proof, it just needs presence." In late July, Red Carpet revealed obtained exclusive access to Yoona's private interview, Her first time openly discussing what had happened. The setting was elegant yet simple, a suite at the Signal Hotel in Gangnam, overlooking the Han River. The city lights shimmered below as she sat near the window, wearing a cream-colored blouse, her hair softly framing her face. She looked older, wiser, infinitely calmer. I never wanted our story to become a rumor, began, her tone steady. But I also realized that hiding it made me feel dishonest. We broke up because we were afraid. We got back together because we learned courage. Paused, glancing toward the skyline. When you live your life under cameras, you forget that love isn't about perfection. It's about forgiveness. We hurt each other. Yes, but we also grew. Maybe that's what real love is, not something that never breaks, but something that learns to mend. Asked what she missed most during the time apart. Smiled faintly. His quiet, she said. Joe never tried to fill silence. He just sat with me in it. Fire in this world. Later, when Red Carpet Revealed spoke with Junho's team, they shared a similar sentiment. He told us once. A staff member said, I used to think love was passion. Now I think it's patience. Reunion wasn't an impulsive decision. It was built slowly, like rebuilding a house brick by brick. They attended each other's rehearsals, shared meals after long shoots, and supported new projects without fear. Yoona visited Junho's concert quietly, in the back row in a black hat, eyes shining when he sang a ballad that fans instantly recognized, the same melody they had hummed in Jeju. By the time autumn arrived, history no longer whispered in speculation but in admiration. Producers, stylists, stars spoke of them as proof that real relationships can survive this business. One director commented, "Rare to see two stars love each other without turning it into performance art. They're teaching everyone that vulnerability is power." In November 2024, Yoona filmed a magazine cover in Paris, her first major international shoot since the reunion. During the interview, when asked about love, he laughed and said, "It's like fashion trends, they come and go. But real love? It's timeless, if you take care of it." The interviewer noted how she spoke of someone who waits rather than chases, a phrase that fans immediately linked to Junho. While Junho was preparing for a new drama press conference, a reporter dared to ask, "True you've reunited with Yoona?" He smiled gently and replied, "I think some stories don't need confirmation. Feel them." Back in Seoul, their friends hosted a small gathering at a rooftop in Hanam-dong. It wasn't a celebration, just a quiet night of laughter, music, and grilled food. Someone played an old song from King the Land, and for a moment, Yoona and Junho looked at each other and smiled knowingly. There was no need for words. Everyone around them understood. This time, they were home. As the evening wind swept through the city, Yoona leaned against the railing, looking down at the glittering lights of Seoul. "It's strange," she said softly to a friend beside her. "Broke apart because of fear. But fear is also what taught us what matters." Friend asked, "And what matters?" Yoona smiled. "Kindness. Always kindness." Later, the pair made their first semi-public appearance together at a charity gala. No red carpet hand-holding, grand announcement, just quiet togetherness. Cameras caught them exchanging glances across the hall. The internet once again erupted. But this time, action felt different, more celebratory, almost protective. Fans wrote messages like they deserve peace. All they've been through. Let them be happy. Months that followed, their relationship became something ordinary, and that was the miracle. They were seen grocery shopping, attending friends' weddings, taking quiet walks by the river. The press moved on, but those who looked closely could see the subtle transformation, the way Yoona laughed with her whole face again, the way Junho no longer hid behind stage smiles. December 2024, Red Carpet Revealed sat down with Yoona once more for a follow-up. She looked radiant. Tea by the window of a Gangnam studio. When asked if she believed in second chances, she didn't hesitate. "Absolutely," she said. "Not because people change overnight, but because love teaches you how to listen differently." We spent a year apart, and in that silence, and what we were both missing, humility. Paused, her voice softer now. "He didn't chase me this time. He just waited. And that's how I knew it was love." Outside, the first snow began to fall over Seoul, blanketing the city in quiet white. Down the street, Lee Junho's car waited, engine running, lights glowing faintly through the flurries. When Yoona stepped out of the building, he rolled down the window, smiling as she climbed in. The car pulled away slowly, disappearing into the snowfall, two silhouettes framed by light, heading somewhere only they needed to be. Back at red carpet revealed headquarters. The editor who had followed their story from the beginning looked over the final draft and wrote a single line beneath the headline before sending it to print. Love doesn't always survive the storm. But when it does, returns gentler, wiser, and real. Perhaps that is where the story truly begins again.